Have you ever created an opt-in or freebie or lead magnet like a webinar or a free ebook or a template kit, and you really struggle to get people signing up for it? You feel like it's such an amazing resource and you've shared about it, but unfortunately, it just seems that people aren't getting on board. You thought it would be the hottest ticket in town, but it doesn't really seem to be getting that traction. Well, one of the things that I find people can really fall short on is not having enough different angles through which they can promote that opt-in. So not having enough different ways that they can talk about it and express why it might be valuable. So what we're going to do in this episode of the Heart Centered Business podcast is we are going to count how many different ways can you promote your opt-in. Now, this is a Tashmas episode of the Heart Centered Business podcast, which means I've got a free gift for you and it's a competition. So you can enter some and win something spectacular. And this is also episode number 441. So you can find all the relevant links and show notes for this episode at tashcorbin.com/441. So let's dive into this one because I want you, if you've gone to all the effort of creating an opt-in, to get the maximum number of people signed up for it as possible. Let's do it. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. If you've faced this challenge in the past where you feel like you have shared promos for your freebie over and over and over again, you're promoting it in all the different spaces you possibly can, but it's just not getting that traction, often the real reason it's not working is because you are just using the same kind of content over and over to promote it. And that messaging gets very stale. That messaging doesn't necessarily have the cut through that gets people's attention and helps them to see that this free resource is actually very valuable for them. And now in these days of people using AI to create promos and create content for socials in particular, I am starting to see that it looks like every single person promoting every single free resource is promoting the same thing, right? Everything is starting to sound the same, look the same, feel the same. And so what ends up happening is, number one, if you've just written 4 different promo posts for your freebie and you're recycling them over and over again, you're going to start to get pinged for duplicate content. So the algorithm's going to show it to less and less people. Number 2, if you don't know how to write promotions for your opt-in that are effective, people just scroll past them. So you're slowly but surely training the algorithm that whenever you talk about this freebie, your audience doesn't actually want to see it. Number 3, if you're using AI to write promos for that opt-in, it doesn't have your voice. It doesn't particularly sing and stand out from the crowd. It's starting to look like everyone else's promo that's been written with AI as well. And number 4, you haven't actually developed your skills nor your capacity to measure and adjust your promos to be able to speak to the value of your freebie. And that's where we really get that resonance and traction, is knowing which angles are the ones that get the attention of your audience. Which angles are the ones that help people to see the value, that create that compelling reason for people to engage with the content, but also to grab that freebie. You need to consistently promote your opt-ins, right? You need to consistently talk about them. You may have noticed that on my podcast, I have promos for my core, maybe 6 different opt-ins over and over and over again. If you have been listening to this podcast for even 50 of the 400 and something episodes I've done so far, you will likely have heard different angles and different promos for the exact same opt-ins and free resources. And that's a strategic decision, and it's with very good reason. People's drivers and motivations to grab those freebies need to be connected with for them to see that as a valuable use of their time. And so, for example, with my Nail Your Niche training, that is a free resource that I offer, sometimes people hear a podcast about why it's so valuable to niche and they're like, yeah, but my problem is not niching. I know what my niche is. And then they'll hear a podcast where I talk about the ways that people might be niching and thinking that they're being specific enough, but it's not actually doing a great job. And they're like, no, I think that I've got that nailed. And then they hear a podcast episode where I talk about the ways that having a specific niche make it much easier for you to craft your messaging. And they're like, oh, yes, okay, I am really struggling with my messaging. And I thought it was just a messaging issue. But now I can see from this podcast episode, I'm likely not niching narrowly enough, so I'm going to go and grab Tash's niche training. So you can see there, like that's 3 different angles, and you might just assume that there's one angle that's the right angle, but that's not the case at all. People often have to hear about niching over and over and over again before they have that light bulb of, yes, that will actually solve the problem that I'm facing right now. And so we need to consistently promote our opt-ins, but we also need to do it through these angles, right? We need to come at it from different cases, right? Making that case for why this is something that's particularly valuable for your niche and for your audience. And that's where this overlap of those 2 facts can result in opt-in promos failing to hit the mark. Because we know that we need to promote our opt-ins over and over and over and over again, but we are trying to rely on a limited number of promos or a limited number of angles to do so. We have just reusing stale promotions or not really ever getting to the point where we know what is going to drive people's engagement with that free resource the most. And also not learning how to speak about our opt-ins, our freebies, our content, and even our products and services, by the way, through those multiple different angles and through that lens of value. This is super valuable for you to invest your time in. This is super valuable for you to exchange your email address for this particular opt-in. So what I thought in this podcast episode is that I'm going to give you 10 different angles through which you can promote your opt-in. Those 10 different angles will help you to ensure that you are looking for these different lenses. You're looking for these different ways to get people to see that value. Now, before I dive into these 10 different angles, I also just want to let you know that with the show notes of today's episode, I am going to also link back to my podcast episode on how to craft better opt-ins as well. That is often one of the core reasons why the promos fall flat is actually your opt-in has been crafted from the wrong drivers, or your opt-in has been crafted in a way that it's not doing its job. So I will pop with the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/441, a link back to a previous podcast episode that will also help you just to check in and make sure that the opt-in we're creating promos for is crafted effectively and we're getting people through an opt-in that's going to be able to do its job. Okay, so I have 10 different angles through which you can promote your opt-in. And one thing that you might notice as I go through these 10 different angles is that for each angle, you can actually come up with 3 or 4 different examples or 3 or 4 different strategies or pieces of content or messages per angle. This is where we really start to see that the opportunities and the messaging lenses through which you can start to promote this opt-in are very wide and varied, and they're all going to contribute to that overall message of drawing people closer to grabbing that opt-in. So I'll share the 10 angles with you here in the podcast episode. They will, of course, be listed out with the show notes at tashcorbin.com/441. So you might even want to come and copy and paste those and pop them into a document or whatever you use when you're crafting promos of your opt-ins. And then you may even also want to pause the podcast episode after I share each angle and just jot down 3 ideas for each of them for your opt-in and see just how often and how widely you can be messaging around this opt-in to really draw in as many people as possible. So let's do it. Now, angle number 1 is the to the point promo. Getting straight to the point. I've created this free resource. Here's why you should access it and complete it. Here's the link to do so. These types of promos often work best for your warmest audience because they already know, like, and trust you, and they already have the gist of what it is that you actually do. And you just need to tell them that the resource exists, and that's all they need to know. So even crafting to the point promos, often I will be able to craft 5 or 6 of those straight out of the gate and focusing on different parts of the value proposition or different reasons why people should jump in and grab it. The second angle is the controversial angle. So how does your approach to this particular thing differ from the mainstream? Or is there a controversial take or opinion that you have that links into this freebie or this resource that you've created? So angle number 2 is the controversial one. Angle number 3 is after giving people some longer form advice or sharing a longer form tip with people. So this is what I use on the podcast. I do a podcast episode that can be between 10 and sometimes 45 minutes long where I'm breaking down a particular strategy. And then the call to action at the end is, and if you want the template to do this, come and grab it. Or if you want a detailed training on how to do this part of that strategy, then here's where to go and access that. So for example, I might do 5 different ways to craft freebies for your business. And strategy number 5 is asking your niche and doing some market research. And then I link to my market research freebie or resource. And so I'm giving people a really detailed and practical tip or some advice or a strategy. And then if people want to dive deeper or they want to dive deeper on a particular element of that, the free resource is how I support them to do that and how they can get that information from me. Angle number 4 is sharing the story of your experience. So is there a reason or an example or something that's happened to you, which is why you crafted this free resource for other people? Is there a story of what you went through or how you really struggled with this particular area? Or you've got a story around when you finally figured this part out, everything else fell into place. And therefore, you've created this free resource, so everyone should go and check it out. Another angle that's slightly different but kind of linked is why you made this resource in the first place. Did you create this resource because this was a conversation you were having consistently with your clients and you wanted to make it accessible to everyone? Did you create this resource because you could see how valuable it was for your audience? Did you create this resource because you wish someone else had done this for you? Which brings me to another angle, and that is the I wish this existed angle. So why do you wish someone had created this resource for you? Why do you wish that this existed long ago, but the best thing is that it now exists, right? So the different reasons why you wish this resource existed and someone else had created it, or you wish someone had given it to you, is a great angle for creating some promos. Number 7 is the testimonial or the success story. So have other people use this resource and it's helped to give them great outcomes. Or have you had success with clients by helping them do this one-on-one, and therefore you've now created this free resource to help everyone else do it because you want everyone to have this same level of success. Angle number 8 is what this free resource is not. So what is it that the resource does not get you distracted by? Or what is it that the resource does not do? And I'm not talking about it through the lens of, oh, this resource isn't going to help you because it doesn't have this thing in it, but more that it's not a distraction or it's not going to send you off on some random adventure that is going to take you further away from your goals. Or this resource is not another thing to add to your to-do list. Instead, it's going to chop things off your to-do list. So things like that, where what is the angle through which you can actually promote this by talking about what it won't do or what it doesn't do to people who access it. Angle number 9 is why today is the perfect day to fix this particular thing, and therefore the resource is going to be really valuable to use today. So why is there urgency around the outcome that this resource is going to deliver on? Why is it important that people do this first before they do anything else? And angle number 10, last but not least, is what will this free resource save? So will it save people time? Will it save people money? Will it save people effort? Will it save people experimenting? Will it save people frustrations? Will it save people from yelling at their kids, right? So what is it that you will actually save people from by having them access and complete this particular opt-in? And as you can probably see by all those different examples, often it's multiples of those. So you're going to get a lot of different promos and angles just from that one on its own. Okay, so I have just given you 10 fresh angles through which you can promote your opt-in and really start to nail that messaging, but finding your voice and your strategy, your way of speaking to that value proposition through those different angles. Now, the number one piece of advice that I would give you is not to give these angles to ChatGPT or AI and ask it to do the writing for you, because you will still fall into the same trap of looking like everyone else and sounding like everyone else as well. Instead, what I would encourage you to do is use these 10 angles as writing prompts and build the skill of speaking to the value proposition of your opt-in through these different angles and with your unique hot take, your unique voice. That is where you stand out from the crowd, you really stop the scroll, and you're getting more and more people excited about signing up for your opt-in and completing it as well. So what is your gift for day 11 of Tashmas? Well, it's your opportunity to win a free opt-in makeover session with me. So I'm giving away a 90-minute one-on-one VIP session in which we take one of your existing opt-ins and we look at all of the data as to how effectively it's doing its job. I will actually go through and read the opt-in or watch the training and give you some feedback. And we will also craft a promo strategy and marketing strategy to increase the number of people who are signing up for that opt-in, as well as increase the conversion rate from that opt-in into hot leads or people purchasing your offer. So if you would like to win this free VIP one-to-one session, you'll need to come to the show notes of tashcorbin.com/441, and all the instructions on how to enter will be there for you. If you are listening to this episode and Tashmas is over, you may just find that the competition is done and the entries are closed, but I will also be offering a discount for anyone who isn't successful in winning and wants to actually purchase an opt-in makeover from me. And we can do that together in the new year. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. I'm really excited to start seeing your fresh and new promos for your opt-ins and seeing you consistently promoting them, attracting people into your mailing list, and hopefully also then converting those peeps into clients or hot leads for your offers. I will see you tomorrow for the last day of Tashmas, day 12. And until then, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.